Very pleased to welcome back Sheriff Richard Mack, founder of the Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association, Board of Directors of the Oath Keepers Movement, oathkeepers.org, former Graham County, Arizona Sheriff, CSPOA.org is the website, and sheriffmack.com as well. Sheriff, welcome back.
Hey, thanks, Tom. It's always good to be with you.
Thank you for joining us. I got a note from you that you wanted to ask me why I'm in the bag for the Democratic Party. Do I have that right?
You sure do, yes. Because, Tom, you and I have said this on your show before, that we have a mutual respect for each other, even though we disagree on a lot of issues. To me, I find it bewildering that somebody as educated and researched and historically sound as you are could still be a apologist and supporter for democratic policies that are so obviously unconstitutional. Now, I call out both Democrats and Republicans. I don't care. Whichever one is degrading the Constitution, is degrading freedom and liberty, and is promoting policies that are clearly outside constitutional parameters, I call them both out. For instance, John McCain, he's nothing but a lying dirtbag politician, career politician, and the same with Harry Reid. Harry Reid is nothing but a liar, scumbag politician who cares only about his own power and position, just like John McCain. There's very few. In fact, I have said this on your show, and I'll say it again. There is no hope in Washington, D.C. to restore personal liberty in America. If we're going to do it, it's going to have to happen in the communities and counties and cities, and it's going to have to be from the bottom up. And we've got to make the bureaucrats and criminals in Washington, D.C., especially the IRS and EPA and others, we've got to make those criminals irrelevant, and we can, county by county and sheriff by sheriff and state by state. And the 10th Amendment, of course, as you know, is my calling card. And I find it very startling and amazing that we revere someone like Bill Clinton, who has had sex parties in the Oval Office, and he doesn't leave in disgrace. He's honored and revered as the number one Democrat in the world. He's paid all this money to go speak, and he's on television and everything, yet Richard Nixon lies about a cover-up regarding a burglary at Watergate Hotel, and he leaves in disgrace. Both of them are disgraceful. Both of them are pathetic. In fact, my favorite quote, my joke about Bill Clinton is, because I sued the federal government when he was president, I'm the only person in history to sue Bill Clinton on a non-sexual matter. And I think it's a great joke, but it's also very truthful in a lot of respects, and I think he disgraced the office, and yet he is revered by Democrats, and it doesn't matter, and he's revered by a lot of people throughout the world.
Well, in some ways, Sheriff, Bill Clinton
I just say both sides. It has to be both sides.
No, I understand your perspective, and I with regard to Bill Clinton, I think he's going to turn out to be one of his wife's biggest liabilities if she becomes the nominee. But
I personally think she is, but that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine. But you asked why I'm in the bag for the Democratic Party, and you mentioned that your concern about things like the EPA being unconstitutional, Social Security being unconstitutional, et cetera, Obamacare, right. And that you want to have personal freedom. You're
Correct.
Fond of freedom. Okay.
Correct.
Here's where we start out in very different places. My understanding of the Constitution is informed by reading Alexander Hamilton, who was a major contributor to it. And Hamilton, you can read this in his report on manufactures. He was Secretary of the Treasury in 1791, and he wrote this report to Congress. It was the official position of the George Washington administration, and in it he goes at some length to point out that both in the preamble to the Constitution and in the beginning and the end of Article 1, Section 8, they say that Congress can do anything that will improve the public welfare. Right. This is here's.
Well, that's a paraphrase, and it's not exactly.
Well, okay. Let me give you the exact quote then. Here's the exact quote. A question has
laws to.
No, hang on just a second. This is the basis of mine. Okay. He says this is Alexander Hamilton. He says a question has been made concerning the constitutional right of the government of the United States to apply this species of encouragement. What he was talking about then was actually subsidies to industries in the United States that we considered vital industries. He said, but there is certainly no good foundation for such a question. The national legislature has express authority to lay and collect taxes, duties, imposts, and excises to pay the debts and provide for the common defense and general welfare, with no other qualifications than that all duties, imposts, excises shall be uniform throughout the United States, and that no tax shall be laid on articles exported from any states. These three qualifications accepted, the power to raise money is plenary and indefinite, and the objects to which it may be appropriated are no less comprehensive than the payment of the public debts and the providing for the common defense and general welfare. The terms general welfare were doubtless intended to signify more than was expressed or imported in those which preceded, in other words, the other items in Article 8, Section 1, Article 8. The phrase is as comprehensive as any that could have been used because it was not fit that the constitutional authority of this union to appropriate its revenues should be restricted within narrower limits than the general welfare, and because this necessarily embraces a vast variety of particulars which are susceptible neither to specification nor definition. Alexander Hamilton, 1791. George Washington agreed with him. Thomas Jefferson agreed with him. No. John Adams agreed with him. Everybody agreed with him. There was no dissent to that, Sheriff.
Well, yeah, I could quote you a lot from Jefferson and Washington and Madison, who did disagree with him. He was about the only one who supported a big central government, and it was rejected.
No, we have that. We have Hamilton's America.
Hamilton also would be turning over in his grave as to how far we have allowed our socialistic government to go in this country. And if you go through the list of the reasons why in the Declaration of Independence that they petitioned for redress and that they actually used as excuses for going to war, we're doing over half of them today. Yeah. And to ignore the historical
excuses going to war. I'm with you on that.
The Revolutionary War, and that we do it worse now, and to say, well, why did the Founding Fathers risk their lives and fortunes and sacred honor to fight for freedom and liberty, and then now we just legislate it away, and that all the worst things going on in our country.
That's the other definition.
All the worst things in our country are both the Democrats and Republicans.
Okay. Again, as I said, I think that we have a different reading of the Constitution,
one
first
that
of all.
I can get you on right now.
And secondly, I think we have a different definition of freedom.
We do.
I believe, I know, as a matter of fact.
It stays out of my life.
Well, I know. I mean, just look at the history of economies. I wrote a book about this called Screwed. The natural state of a capitalistic economy with very little regulation is the way that Europe ran for 1,000 years. It's called feudalism. You have very few very rich people. You have a very small middle class, and they're basically the people who cater to the middle class.
Increased in America since Barack Obama has been in office, and George Bush.
And a very large class of the working poor.
You revere the Democrats who caused that very problem you're talking about.
And therefore, I believe that if you don't regulate capitalism and you don't have a certain relatively, absolutely answerable to the people amount of socialism.
It always has been regulated, like the monopoly problems, which have been enforced, but for you to justify, and any Democrat to justify, the regulations that have taken over the Second Amendment and the First Amendment and destroy liberty at will, and property ownership by the EPA is completely destroyed. The EPA and the IRS issue fines to Americans without due process, which is required by the law, which is required by the Supreme Court.
I'm a big fan. I'm with you on due process. I mean, there's many areas where we agree, but I think I've said my piece. I'm guessing you have too, and I have no need to have the last word here. Sheriff Richard Mack, founder of the Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association, CSPOA.org. Thank you, Sheriff.
Let's do it again, Tom.
Indeed. We should keep this conversation going. I find it fascinating.